So welcome again, everybody. It is Thanksgiving Day for Canadians and Indigenous Peoples Day for Americans. So let's start by acknowledging how incredible it is to have all of the members that were able to come today, and a few members that normally come kind of checked in and said they couldn't come. But I definitely am thinking of them as well, because this was a really great book, and that was the feedback I got from folks who couldn't come, who wanted to come. I guess we should start by acknowledging the land that we're on. This book club starts in Mohkinstsis or Calgary, and that's on the Blackfoot Confederacy, so the Blackfeet south of the U.S. and Canadian border, north of the border, the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani. 1877, fairly recently, Treaty 7 was signed, which also brought in the Stoney, as well as the Dene from Tsuut'ina. I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit, status and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. All non-Indigenous are treaty partners with the government signing on your behalf. So yeah, I always like to start off with a land acknowledgement to get us going. I usually try to prioritize Indigenous voices and QT BIPOC and go from there. So for folks who are new, but I don't think we have anyone new today. So just a little reminder as we get going today. The book that we have today is Peace and Good Order, The Case for Indigenous Justice in Canada by Harold R. Johnson. And I have a CBC clip that I thought maybe I'd play, but I thought maybe we could do a bit of a check in first to see how people felt about the book, and then we'll press play on that to see it's 20 minutes. I didn't listen to the whole thing, so I don't know if it's all on the book or if it's like only the first half, but yeah, I thought we might like that. So I'll invite, I think Kathy is the only Indigenous person here other than myself. Kathy, did you want to chime in your thoughts on this book?
I really liked the book. I wish it was a lot longer. Um, I want to look into his other books because apparently he wrote a book about his brother. Um, and I think there should be a law against a book that makes you cry by the third page. I don't know why, but I did. I'm just like so
Right?
emotional. I was
But
like,
Kathy, I think it was really like the moment, because you remember that moment. I remember that moment the Bushy verdict came out and how devastating it was. I cried like a baby those first 3 pages too, for the same reason. And because
yeah,
of the hate that I was seeing in Alberta here. I'll tell you about the Métis thing later, but I feel you on that emotion.
yeah, it was tough. And it was just like, okay, let's get it out and get on with it. That's all.
That's it? Okay. Sounds good. Um, okay. I guess I'll just quickly say this. I realized I was almost dog earing every single page, and I was like, well, I can't do that. So obviously, I'm really enjoying the book. There's some pieces that I don't love his perspective of. I know he knows a lot about alcohol, but I think that there's a difference between being a lawyer and understanding addiction in being in the mental health world. So I've known about his other book, Firewater, and I've always hesitated getting it because sometimes when people don't deal with internalized oppression, they write really shitty books. Like I could name a few that we've done with this book club, almost all by male authors. And I think this book, he was reflecting on oppression dynamics for the first time. So I would argue all of his previous work is probably like, I hate natives, I hate alcohol, and rather than seeing it more through the eyes of colonialism. And even the way he talked about the Gladue report and colonialism in this book, I was like, I don't think you're quite there, buddy. I don't think you quite understand it. But uh, that's like, out of 100%, that's like, the 1% critique I'd give of it. 99% of it, I actually think that every judge, cop, anyone affiliated with the legal system should kind of have to read this book. This would be the book that I would recommend a law society or anybody associated with the justice system, because this is like, I love Jody Wilson Rainbow's book. Don't get me wrong, books, I should say, and the solutions in them. But I think this kind of talks about it in a way that the regular beat cop, the regular lawyer or a judge would understand. And I love the way he made fun of Harvard and the arrogant professors. Like, they deserve it for everything they're worth, for the way they treat people. One of my favorite stories he told was being in law school and having a coworker or a colleague, and she was like a mother of two kids, and the mom, her mom, and the handicapped brother was living in the same house. And so she just she was working full time, trying to do this, and just couldn't make ends meet whatsoever. And he just was like, it wasn't her failure, it was absolutely the failure of the system and the way it works. And he actually said that the trades, like, this should be like a trade, and he learned more from trades than he did law school. And I really love the way he said, you don't have to be smart to go to law school at all. It's just a matter of privilege to go. And so I really appreciated his like humanity in all of this, and talking about it from that point of view. And I was reading that one part where I think he disclosed, and for those who are triggered, I'm really sorry, childhood, I mean, all of these book clubs are traumatizing and triggering, so I apologize. But anyway, he kind of talked about child sexual assault through his own eyes and what that would look like through the system. And it doesn't sound like he ever told anybody that, but that would explain his anger and a lot of that self-hate that I was reading. So now maybe he was just saying, what if it was me as a 10-year-old boy who happened to be, and he he was pretty specific on the details. So I really got the impression it was like his real story. So at least that's can explain the trauma that he has endured as part of his story, and why he's angry at the world, and that and maybe took him a little longer to do that in the inner work. um anyway, I really enjoy this book. I really think that everyone should have to read it who has an opinion of folks with addiction, folks with the justice system ties, and systemic racism. That was another thing I didn't think he quite understood. Like, at one time, he's like, "There's not really systemic racism in the system; it's more the people." And it's like, I think it's both, buddy. But that bigger picture, he really nails it overall. So I really enjoyed this book, and yeah, I have a lot more to say, but I also want to give space to other people. So maybe we'll go Kat, Rosemary, Mike, and we'll go from there, just in alphabetical order of the participants.
Hello. I also really love this book too. You said everything I wanted to say about law school, because I thought that was brilliant. It's like, I never thought of it like that before. It's like, oh yeah. And how they do tend to make it sort of an elitist, exclusionary, club that people are privileged to join. I also read a lot of this book when I was sick, so some of it didn't stick with me, but I loved the whole final chapter on the closing argument chapter. I thought that was really great, and how he talks about redemption instead of deterrence, and how brilliant that would be. Like, wouldn't that be amazing if we allowed people to do that for themselves, rather than try and prevent crime or punish them for their crime, but bring them back into community and help them heal. That's all I gotta say right now.
That was a really great point, though, because that was kind of throughout his entire thing, was that he'd rather see, instead of 300 officers, 300 trauma counselors, right? Like, that was throughout his whole book, and I love that. Yeah, so I think, Rosemary, you're up.
Yeah, I had not been aware of the fact that incarceration rates have been increasing so dramatically since 1960. And like Kat, I really appreciated how he framed it in terms of redemption versus deterrence, and that he made such a strong case about why incarceration is simply not working. And he called it a contagion, that it actually reproduces itself. And the other thing I found interesting in terms of reading, and we did read Clifford, you know, he's a really good writer. He just carries you along. But I was starting to become quite frustrated about what to do about it, what to do about it. And then that's when he started going into his arguments about what could be done. So I was so happy to get to that point, but we're still left with well, I like what he says. He says, we can't wait. We can't wait to be given this. We need to take it. We need to assert it. We need to reassert our jurisdiction. That, and he argues that under Treaty 6, they never gave up. They never gave up their jurisdiction over law and order.
I really like the way he tied it back to treaty as well. And because again, like, if there's one thing that's upset me about the Israel-Palestine thing, and I put it in my podcast today, like, clearly people are not getting this whole treaty concept. They're not getting the land acknowledgement thing. They're not getting it. So, and I really like the way he kept referring back to it through the entire book too. So yeah, he's a great storyteller. Mike.
Hello. Yeah, actually, it's funny that to hear about treaty, because actually that was the first thing I picked up on. I think my own personal reflection, because, and I can't remember the exact date, but Treaty 7 Day was back in late September and 22nd. And there was a webinar I was on from the University of Calgary, and it reminded me that I actually, as a white settler, I don't really know that much about the treaties. And that, like you always say, we're all partners in the treaty because the government of Canada signed on our behalf. So I think that was a point. I started this book just after that. So I think it kind of just was another hammer on the nail to say, you as a person don't know as much about the treaties as you should, right? And without getting too general about it, I would say a lot of people that I know and that I talk with, I would say it's very similar, right? That we as settlers don't know a lot about the treaties, and we should know a lot more about the treaties. So I think that was my first point. And I think it was really an eye-opener for me when he said, the law, and I'm reading here, the law is best understood when seen from the perspective of the white colonial settlers. And that he sort of had to think about things from that perspective in order to understand. Because he also did say that everything that was done was legal, but that there's a difference between being legal and fair, right? And that allowing more perspectives, and especially Indigenous perspectives, into the law will increase the fairness. So yeah, that was it for me. I've missed a couple meetings, so I'm glad to be back here, and just happy to hear what everyone else has to say.
Gratefully for that, Mike. Thanks so much. And I'm glad you caught that UFC seminar as well. And I got the video release of it, so I got to watch it still. But yeah, I'm excited to watch that. So, because I always like hearing elders talk about it through their lens the most. Is it McKenna? I'm sorry, Michaela. M. Kaylee. I can't remember your first name. I'm sorry.
Marla. I think I'm on my work laptop. That's sorry about that, folks.
I'm sorry, Marla. I know your name. I should have. I don't know. I couldn't get it.
It is okay. I understand moments like that. Happens to me more than I would like. Yeah, I really liked this book. I think it is a very accessible read, and I think it's something that you could easily hand to just about anybody. And it's sort of a non-threatening read, I guess, right? It's not, you know, as in your face as some could be about how, you know, how things could be different. So I could see myself like giving this to certain people, challenge reading other material. I liked too that he reflected like I enjoyed his reflections and kind of you know, coming to the realization that being in the system for so long, you know, was there good in that? And I kind of appreciate when people take that perspective of trying to look back on what you've done and the system that's around you, and are you able to really make the change that you wanted to make? The one thing that he kind of mentioned this, and I've heard other people say this too, is does it really change the system to have more Indigenous people, right? Or do you just have to tear the whole thing down? Because yeah, him talking about he kind of lost his indigeneity from being in the system for so long and having to prove himself and go through law school and practice like, you know, the Western system, and everything is done in the Western way. So what good is that, I guess? So that was a good reflection for him to point out. The redemption versus deterrence too. I really thought that was a great chapter when he was writing about that. And just again, like all these reads we've been doing, talking about like showing the data that shows that, you know, the status quo doesn't work. Like how many ways does it have to be said on so many different topics? And you know, here we are again, like another the thousands, right? Thousands of studies that are saying that it doesn't work. And it would be really interesting to see a system where redemption was actually like honestly embraced, and what that would do for our communities. And when he talked about the reluctance to testify against your community member because they might be the person that's supplying you the meat or the whole community meat, or, you know, is the one that would look after your kids or do a favor or something. Yeah, that really hit home. I think when he talked too about the challenge of like redemption is a good thing, but there's also the challenge of having the ability to effectively do it with the way our system is set up. And I think about this being in nonprofit land, that you may want to do things better and differently, but the resources just aren't there. The wait lists are too long, or it doesn't exist, or it's too expensive, or whatever it is, that it's hard to actually it's hard to do it the way things are structured. We really have to build it from the ground up. And land acknowledgement. So my workplace, we're actually going to have a session next year about are they okay anymore? The way we're doing them, are they meaningful? What is the point? Should we be doing it differently or at all? Like, how do we? So we're going to have a discussion about what does it mean, and why are we saying these words? Like, is there any intent behind that? And so I'm looking forward to that discussion. And I think that's all I have to say. It was you always have good reads, Michelle. Open the
well, I
door
know
to some more thinking.
somebody recommended this book and I was like, yeah, okay, we'll do that one. And it's actually been like a highlight. I was kind of like, oh, I'll read it. And then I started getting into it. And like you kind of mentioned stats. I love stats. So they're my favorites. So when he had that embedded almost, I think it was like page 4 or something, I was like, yes, I love this. This is like it's evidence-based, right? His opinion, obviously not, but he has so much knowledge, right? And life experience that it's like,
Yeah.
this is a great book. So yeah, I appreciate that. I am going to invite Shelley to or because Mike did. How did I
So
accidentally
I
have Mike talk before Shelley? I'm sorry.
um I really like this book. I liked when he talked about justice, the emblem of justice being a blind woman on the scale, one hand on the sword and the other, but you can't judge me if you refuse to look at me. Like, how can you judge somebody if you justice isn't black and white, there's so many circumstances. So I really like that one. And Albert Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I think we all kind of touched on that, but he really put it in with the definition of insanity, because they are expecting different results and the stats show that they're not. So they need to do something different. And I think it's with defund the police is put the money in the 300 trauma workers, not the 300 police officers. They're not equipped to deal with trauma or in mental health or the social work stuff. And I found that when people talk about death of somebody really close to them, I just bawl. For the last part of the book, the afterward, I just bawled when he talked about his father and his mom and how much they meant to him. And I did pick up on the deterrence belief system. I liked that as well because that makes more sense. And talked about the treaties. And one more, I had some tabs. That they told the parents that they could not teach their kids Cree. And I thought like that was just indoctrination from the very beginning, that they had to be, because they were told that the children spoke Cree, they would not do well in school. Like that's just bullshit. And I think that the so much language has been lost because of that. But it was a really good book, and I did like how he talked about the stats and then weaved in his experiences. But I think that's all I have to say.
Thanks as always, Shelley.
Thanks, Michelle. As others have said, I found this a very accessible book. I kind of procrastinated a little bit to open it up because I was thinking the legal system. I wasn't sure how I would get through it, and got through it quite a bit faster than I had anticipated. So just his writing was so easy to read, and the points he was making just were really powerful points. So thank you for choosing this book and for getting us there. I don't have a lot to add that's different than what others have said. I think most of my notes keep coming back to that idea of redemption versus deterrence. So I think I reflected a lot, and as others have been talking as well, we're really talking about the different worldviews at play here. And just there was one quote that he had that I wrote down that I think kind of summarized that for me, and talked about, so race is so fundamental to our existence that the refusal of justice system to consider it means the system has closed its mind to our reality. So I just thought that was a really powerful way of summarizing that. It's all operating from one worldview, and therefore it makes a lot of sense that it's not working for everyone, and then makes such good evidence informed points on how that looks and what the impacts have been. And so then I think it leaves me thinking, you know, if I was slow to want to pick this book up, if I was slow to want to read about the justice system, you know, how are we going to get further to understanding what those things are? Because I think excellent points have already been made about changes that would benefit all of us. And we aren't going to get there unless we have a significant amount of people being aware of what those changes could look like. I mean, I think we're dealing a lot with status quo has so much momentum and so much power in our days. And so what I was writing as others were talking was just thinking, you know, in order to reflect on other perspectives, we have to do a lot of pausing of fear and assumptions. I do think that the fear and assumptions is where we're like, well, that could never work. So I'm reflecting a lot on that. And then really appreciate the insights from others just to think about where he individually was. You know, I could tell he had gone through a lot of growth throughout his career and his life. And he did seem to have quite a lot of awareness, but then as you said at the beginning, Michelle, like there's a lot of internalized oppression and pieces like that were also there. So that was helpful for me to kind of look back and remember that any book is written from the perspective of one author, and then his experience is going to be framed by that. But not much more to add other than it's worth reading. It's a book worth picking up just to understand the justice system. I think I haven't had interactions that have pushed me to have to understand these things. And I think it's reminding me that's what they tell you in like elementary and middle school when they're like, we're in a democracy and there's responsibilities that come with that and all of those things. I have a daughter in school, they're studying those pieces right now. And it doesn't really resonate at that point. You're kind of like, yeah, I know it's important. But we don't, I'm just reflecting on how do we keep that conversation going? So thanks very much.
Well, brilliant. I love hearing everybody's, you know, thoughts on this book. There's two things I wanted to bring up, and Kathy kind of started it with it, where the first few pages are really heart-wrenching, because I'm sure we all have a memory, unfortunately, probably a traumatic memory of when Gerald Stanley was found not guilty. And just by chance, at the same time, I had been given messages between the widow of one of the Métis hunters that was murdered in close to Glendon, Alberta. And I follow her, and she was posting pictures of a swastika on a property, along with a sign of, you know, people can die. And they had reported it to the RCMP, and the RCMP was telling them to take it down. And she told me that she was getting death threats from it. So, you know, I was so angry and sad and mad and traumatized and wanting to go up there and punch someone, and, you know, or just going up there to hug her. You kind of have all those emotions all at once. And then I read this, like, hey, remember when Gerald Stanley was found not guilty? I'm like, yes, I do remember it. It was awful. And, you know, so I had that kind of the two things combined. Kind of looping back to what Wendy was talking about, though, I wanted to bring to attention Stop the Stack YYC. They're on social medias. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, they're on TikTok, and they're trying to educate Canadians, especially like what Wendy said, you know, those of us who have not been touched by the justice system in that way, and the privilege we have because we've never had to do that. Stop the Stack is trying to educate people of how the justice system will throw as many charges at usually a Black activist. This has been documented in the Black activism communities for years, where they'll throw a whole bunch of charges in the hopes that they'll stick. And that in that way, you know, when people break parole, etc., like it just ruins their life, right? You have to put all your money towards legal defense. You have to try to exonerate your name. You'd be looked at as a criminal for the rest of your life. And how that really is like a technique the justice system uses against activists and people of color. And I was at, and Rosemary was there. We were at the Calgary Board of Education with the queer community, and across the street was the anti-queer community. And we were there, and Adora was, or not Adora, Taylor McNally was asked to leave. And so today she was also asked to leave. She went to the Justice for Palestinian rally, and she was asked to leave again. So, and that's one of the conditions that the police and the legal system have in her so-called parole, is that if they ask her to leave, that she has to leave. And then they all have a warrant out for her arrest. So she lives on absolute anxiety 24/7. And while they're doing that to Adora and to Taylor right now, when will it be my turn? When will it be Autumn Eagle speakers or any other activist, Chantel Chagnon, you know, any activist in our city? When will it be their turn, right? So I think it's really important that we understand that this is a movement. They are looking for letters of support. So if you know Taylor McNally or Adora Nufer, and you can give them a letter of support, they would really appreciate that. I was going to give them one, and if they liked it, make a TikTok of it and put it out there, because tomorrow Taylor's in school or court, and she was in court last week, and she has to pay $3,500. There's no deadline, but the point is that she owes the government $3,500 for existing and having the audacity for standing up for Black people's rights. So this is an important conversation to be having with the exact book we just read about peace and good order. Because while they're choosing to do this to Taylor and Adora, it could easily be on the Indigenous community. And especially in light of, you know, this Palestine and Israel issue, and there being a huge division in Canada for folks who understand reconciliation, racism, and Indigenous rights and land acknowledgements versus people who were adamantly against it anyway and are for fascism, right? So we're having a major conflict. This is a major impetus moment, right? Any thoughts or reflections on that?
I like to call those people Trumpers. I was just, yeah, reading somebody's post about it, and I just said, you know, I support them. I don't care what anybody thinks about me, but I support Palestinian. And then I ended with land back, you know, like, you know, if the world wants to turn a blind eye for 75 years, and, you know, what can you expect, right?
Thanks, Kathy. All right, I know it's Thanksgiving, so maybe people aren't too interested in having that discussion. So I'm going to share screen, and we'll listen to this clip I have. Oh yeah, and our next book club is like a 400-page final report PDF. And although it was written in June of 2021, there's not like an updated one at all. So just so you know, and you're ready for it. I opened it up and went, whoa, this is going to be a good one. And
what is it, Michelle? What a report on what?
oh, our next book club is, I'll get you the link here. I have Carla Mark on. It's a report to guide the implementation of a national action plan on violence against women and gender-based violence. They have like a few pages on the national inquiry, which I find so insulting, because it's like, you know, so we have to whitewash the national inquiry in order to and rename it and make a new 400-page report. So anyway, I have this copied, and I'll send the link to you in this chat here in a moment. And I'll do that while we listen to this.
Harold R. Johnson is a member of the Montreal Lake Cree Nation in Saskatchewan.
You guys can hear
Early
this?
in his life, he joined the Canadian Navy,
Hope so.
and he's been a logger, trapper, fisher, heavy equipment operator, firefighter, and miner, among other things. He left mining to study law at the University of Saskatchewan and did his Master's of Law at Harvard. After years of practicing, he left the profession because he believes the justice system harms Indigenous people, and he argues his case in Peace and Good Order, the case for Indigenous justice in Canada. His latest book is Cry Wolf, Inquest into the True Nature of a Predator. He writes about respecting and honoring the wolf, about traditional Indigenous teachings about wolves and their relationship with the greatest invasive species on Earth, us. Harold now devotes his time fully to writing. For many years, he and his wife Joan lived on his family trapline in northern Saskatchewan. Recently, though, he relocated to Gabriola Island, BC, and that's where we recorded this conversation, outside and socially distanced back in the summer. One of the things that we've been talking a lot about, and it's really messing with my head, is about story and the current thinking that you're doing about story.
Yeah.
What sort of landed on you and got you thinking about story in a way that you have not been for all the years that you've been telling stories and writing them?
It came out spontaneously in a conversation I was having. Somebody asked me a question, and I said, we have to change the story we're telling ourselves. And I blew myself away with that, and then started thinking about story and took that idea home and sat on it for a long time and then worked with it. And the more I thought about story, the more I realized that absolutely everything is story. I am story, you are story, the universe is story. All these things that we've come to believe in are just things that we made up. Um, Colonization, this powerful story of the Aboriginal people as victims of colonization. And that story is told not about us as much as to us. And we've come to believe this story that we were victims of colonization. And you look, it's just a story. And you look back, there's other stories. Every story has another story to it. So the story of colonization is about Christopher Columbus going to look for spice and perfume. And the reason he needed spice and perfume is because where he lived, they didn't bathe. You got two baths in your life, once when you were born and once when you died. So they stunk. So the perfume's really good if the people around you all stink. So they really needed perfume. They needed spice because they didn't know how to cure meat. And if you're going to eat rotten meat, it's good to have spice on it. So he went looking for spice and perfume. The society that he came from was a feudal system with a lord, very rigid hierarchies. Everybody had their place, everybody knew their place. There was no such thing as private property, it was tenure. So my grandfather farmed this land, my dad farmed this land, I'm farming this land, my kid's going to farm this land. Tenure. The lowest people in that hierarchy were lordless men. So outlaws living in the forest and merchants walking between villages with pack sacks full of pots and pans. Columbus gets to America, finds us, and people start coming over. And the only ones who can come over are people who aren't tied to the castle and the structures there. So the merchants come over and they take back shiploads of gold. So the wealth of America is taken back by the merchants. They discover food, real food. You know that picture of the pilgrims at the first Thanksgiving and the boards that they made a table out of and all of the food on that table? That's all Indian food. That's all North American food. Pumpkins, corn, beans, squash. Even the turkey is American food. Potatoes, tomatoes, all of that is ours. The nations that they came from, their food was oats, wheat, and barley.
That's the stuff that didn't go bad.
Yeah, that's what they lived on. They didn't know about all of this food. Their societies had been decimated by the Black Plague. The population was way down. I think 3/4 of them had died in the plagues. So they get food and medicine, and the population in Europe starts to go up. And then the wealth. So their entire society is turned upside down. So these people who used to be at the lowest, the merchants who were at the lowest level, are now wealthier than the monarchs who've wasted all of the treasure. The treasuries are empty because they've been fighting wars between each other for hundreds of years. So they're broke. And the merchants come back with money. And they're wealthier than the monarchs. And the whole society is turned upside down. And the money from America pays for the Industrial Revolution. And Aboriginal people have changed Europe. We did more to change Europe with ideas of anarchy, democracy, all of these ideas.
Sustainability.
Yeah, all of these ideas have completely changed Europe. We've did more to change them than they've done to us. I live in a cabin on my trap line. I fish, hunt, trap, and gather. Our languages are still strong in the northern part of the country. We haven't been changed. It's just the story and how you tell the story that impacts how we see ourselves.
What's the connection between story and culture?
They're the same thing. Stories are extremely powerful. Stories can heal you, stories can kill you. So, placebo, we all know that. I give you a sugar pill, I tell you it's medicine. If you take the pill and believe the story, 30 to 50% of people experience a reduction in symptoms. Stories can heal. Stories can kill. Nocebo. I give you the exact same sugar pill. This time the story I tell you is that it's poison. If you take the pill and believe the story, you're going to get sick and you could possibly die. There was a young man, 26 years old, took 29 pills that he thought were antidepressants. His heart rate went down. His blood pressure went down. He required medical intervention to stay alive. They had him on intravenous, and he didn't recover until they told him that all he had taken were sugar pills. Stories can kill.
You were a practicing lawyer for many, many years, and you had to create arguments for the people you were representing. Perhaps you had to tell stories.
I did. When I was working as defense counsel, I told myself a story that I was the champion of the people and I was keeping Aboriginal people out of jail. And then I had this client who hired me because he was charged with assaulting his spouse. And I flew up into a far northern community and represented him. And I got rid of the charge for him. He paid me. He got charged with hitting her again. And again, I went up north and got the charges dealt with for him. And then the third time he hired me, all of a sudden I felt like this man thinks he can beat up his wife anytime he wants, and Harold Johnson's going to get him off. And I flew into the northern community and took him out behind the community hall where we were holding court. And I said, buddy, if you beat her up again, I'm going to kick the shit out of you. Now go in there and plead guilty, and I'll keep your sorry ass out of jail. And I knew I was on the wrong side. Then 2008 happened, the economy collapsed, and there was a job at prosecutions, and I thought I'd take that till that all blew over. And then as a prosecutor,
Crown prosecutor.
Crown prosecutor, I knew that 95% of the people in court are Aboriginal people, but 100% of the victims are Aboriginal people. And I just told myself a different story. I said, I'm representing the victims. I'm representing the women who are getting beaten up. And I was able to tell myself that story for a long time.
Until when?
Until I saw that most of the people who came to court were there because of something they did while they were intoxicated by alcohol. And we're just dealing with alcohol abuse. And I realized I was making things worse instead of better for Aboriginal communities. And I couldn't tell myself that story anymore. And when I got to that point, I was twisting and turning, trying to figure out how I was going to get out of this. Crown prosecutors get paid really well. And it was kind of, how am I going to, do this? I've got myself into a lifestyle that I like. And I was twisting and turning. I knew I was going to leave. I just didn't know how. And then an opportunity arose. I met a deputy minister of justice, and We're talking about the problems in the north, and I'm explaining it's all about alcohol, and Aboriginal people have to change the story we tell ourselves about alcohol. And from that conversation, we created the Northern Alcohol Strategy. And then I went to work. After 4 years of working in Larange, working with people, getting the entire community involved, creating conversations, and that's how you change story. You change the conversation that people are having and invite them into the conversation, create safe places to speak, and the story changes. And after 4 years, the crime rate in Larange went down. RCMP calls for service related to alcohol went down. Emergency room visits related to alcohol went down. School attendance went up. It can be done.
In Peace and Good Order, you talk about how the fundamental difference between First Nations is the idea of justice is much more along the lines of redemption. And the way the Canadian justice system is set up doesn't allow for that possibility. It allows greatly for punishment.
Yeah.
How do you think it can be moved over to redemption, or is that the right question?
That's the wrong question.
Okay.
The question is, what's the story? What is the story that we tell ourselves that we call justice? Justice doesn't exist. It's a story that we made up. A wolf kills an elk. There's no revenge. There's nothing just about it. It just happens. There's nothing in nature that is we can call justice. Going along with that story of justice and Judgment Day is this idea of deterrence. That if you do something wrong and I punish you for that, you will learn your lesson and you won't do it again. And people who see you being punished won't do it. And it doesn't work. We know that if we send someone to jail, if we incarcerate someone, they are more likely to commit offenses when they get out than if we didn't incarcerate them. We began incarcerating Aboriginal people in about 1960. Before that, we incarcerated people of Eastern European ancestry or French. The Canadian justice system has always been racist.
What happened in 1960? Why is that a line?
1960 Aboriginal people in Saskatchewan were given the right to go into the bar and the right to vote. And for some reason it changed and they began policing us. And the incarceration rate of Aboriginal people has climbed steadily since 1960. And today we're incarcerating more women and children than at any time before. Tinkering with the system doesn't fix anything. It's not changing. My younger brother had been killed by a drunk driver. And I'd gone to court and spoken at the sentencing and told the judge, I have no animosity towards this man. And gave suggestions on what might help things. And the judge sentenced Hillary Cook to 3 years. And sending Hillary Cook away for 3 years didn't help my family at all. My brother didn't come back. His children didn't get their father. His grandchildren didn't get their grandfather back. And we were left with this big hole in our lives that the justice system couldn't fill.
This becomes a story of redemption, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And then it didn't do Hillary any good. And I wanted to write about that, how useless that sentence was. And I called Hillary, and he agreed to meet me for coffee, and we talked about it.
What was that meeting like?
It was tense for the first few minutes, and then we just recognized each other as human beings and talked about it. And when our meeting was over, I needed some facts. In the original draft, I said he had a 13-year-old daughter. I was wrong. He had a 13-year-old granddaughter that he left behind. So we corrected some of my errors. And then as we were leaving, he said he wanted to go to schools and talk to children about drinking and driving. And a couple of days later, I get a phone call from Students Against Drinking and Driving at the Larange High School inviting me to come talk to them because I'd written a book called Firewater, How Alcohol is Killing My People and Yours. And I said, yeah, I'll come, but can I bring Hillary? And we went to the high school and stood in front of the students. And Hillary talked about what it felt like to wake up in the morning not remembering what happened the night before, damage to his truck, and the RCMP are there telling him that he'd killed somebody. And we stood shoulder to shoulder, and I told the students what it felt like to lose a brother. We had a real powerful impact on those students. I heard later of students who went home to their parents, and their parents are telling me, my son, who really isn't interested in school, came home all excited and said, Mom, Dad, you won't believe what I heard in school today. And for Hillary, he's earning his redemption, and we're doing good.
It's a very powerful story, and you tell it near the end of Peace and Good Order. And it isn't your first brother who you've lost to a drunk driver.
Yeah.
How have you found, is forgiveness the right word? How have you been able to find a way through?
I gotta tell you, traditional justice, Aboriginal people. So the most horrendous crime is murder. If you murdered my brother in the traditional way, there were 4 things I could do. I could murder you back. I could do nothing. I could demand gifts. You took my brother. I want a team of dogs. I want a horse. I want a teepee. I want a dozen buffalo robes. You should pay. And the highest form of, let's use the word justice, is I would adopt you as my brother, and you would take my brother's place. And remembering that, I know that the man who killed my older brother Clifford, his life was changed. He went to court and beat the charge, and some people would think that justice wasn't served. But I know that in the years following, he changed his life around. He quit being the partier. He raised a family, and he did a good job at it. And it was probably because he was impacted by the life that he took. So my brother's death created goodness in a different family.
One of the things that we've talked about just sort of skatingly is you're opening a school of visiting. I want to end this radio visit on your idea of the school of visiting. What makes a good visit?
Time. No agenda. Love. There should be some food. Tea and coffee. Water, if that's all you have. And time. And just accepting each other as human beings. And patience. And storytelling. And storytelling and learning to listen to stories. If you learn how to listen with your heart, So imagine where your heart is physically within your body on the left side of your chest until you're aware of it, till you can feel it, and then just let it go. And when you do that, practice listening with your heart, your brain does something. It stops thinking of the answer while the person is speaking, and you can just listen. And when you can really listen, then you can hear. And after you've practiced this for a long time, you learn how to speak from the heart. And it's the same ritual. You imagine where your heart is, and don't worry about the words that are going to come out, because they're going to come out from the heart. And that's how you visit.
Thank you for this good visit.
And thank you for having me, Sheila.
My conversation with Harold R. Johnson, and thanks for the great visit.
All right. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts. I'll ask Kathy if she wants to start.
Yes, I do. Just trying to see what it was where he talks about hope and the marshmallow test and how the kids without hope take the marshmallow right away, and the other kids can wait the 15 minutes and get 2 marshmallows. It really touched me because just when he talks about it in all the following couple of chapters there, I won't read them, but I will read the one chapter. When hope has been siphoned away, all that remains is daily existence. When you have no hope of finding a job, why bother to look for one? When you have no hope of a college or university degree, why go to school? And he goes on, but basically that sentence really, when hope has been siphoned away, all that remains is daily existence. And I feel that that's what's been done to the Indigenous people here in Canada, that they've taken all our hope away for so long. And then they want to sit there and point the finger and say, look at all your problems. What's wrong with you people? It's really hard. I just wish there was some way that we could give this hope back to the next generation, like especially on the res, where they're not able to access the amenities of an urban setting, right? Like I think it's really important that we give hope to these kids. So that's all I can say.
Anybody else? Quiet tonight. That's okay.
I wanted to, when he talked about, well, he didn't, his whole thing was about the story. I don't know, I struggle with that because I think I can intellectually understand what he's saying. It's the story that's told. But there's the whole power imbalance and the whole infrastructure and everything that goes along with that. So I don't know. It's more than the story. It would be nice if we could just turn around and wake up tomorrow and tell a different story, but there's I don't know, it's weird because he says that and it kind of makes you a bit hopeful, or makes me a bit hopeful that yes, we can change things, but then when you really kind of sit with it, it's like, oh my God, there's just so much more behind that, and it's not it's more than the story. Anyway, that's gonna sit with me for a while.
Okay. Kat, did I see you unmute yourself for a minute there?
Yeah. Well, in response to Marla, I just wanted to say, yeah, white people really have to take the story on board ourselves and try and change the narrative too. And we've got to fight this stupid white supremacy that is our general story of Canada, really. I just want to say thank you. I'm grateful for you, Michelle, and the books and everyone here at the book club. And I wish you a very happy month. And Rosemary, I sent you the Word doc for the National Action Plan.
Thank you.
Awesome. It's in PDF form. Is that an issue though? Like no, PDF is good. Okay. That's great. Oh no, it's an issue. Kat, did you do the transfer for her? Is that what I understand? Oh, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Like it's for over 400 pages. I want to say like 411 or something. So, obviously we don't want it inaccessible. And I'm going to post it publicly in the hopes that maybe it can bring in a few new folks, in the hopes that they'll come, but you never know. I think unless I post it like once every second other day or something, that people don't see it, because Indigenous women algorithms are at the bottom, just like us being at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. I'll see posts from my own friends like from 4 days ago, and it's like 4 days ago does not help me and doesn't help them. So anyway, well, thanks folks for coming in. I'm just going to pause the recording for a sec. So I just want to say again, thanks to everybody who came today and contributed. I really appreciate it. Really looking forward to next month's as well. Although a 400-page dossier, that's going to be like, if there's 30 days, we got to do a few pages a day in order to get caught up there. But I know I'm going to focus the MMIW part first, because I've been saying this religiously on my podcast for like the last few months, that I think it's a whitewash version of the National Inquiry. So they better have a good way of incorporating this, because I just find it depressing that there's 231 calls to justice that nobody wants to care about, but yet we can take a whitewash version of it and maybe care about it, right? Make it a 400-page report on it. So I don't know. I'm hoping I'm wrong. Let's hope I'm wrong. And we'll go from there. And then, so thanks folks for being a part of the book club and for constantly coming and the great feedback. If you have any book suggestions that you want for next year, please let me know. I'm hoping, because I do have a stack of books, so I was just going to put them together and make that next year's book club. But, if there's one that I don't own yet and I want to get, I want to do that one. And Kat has already sent her list for next year to me. So Kat, do you want to talk about your book club at all real quick?
Sure. I don't really remember my list right now. I'm just gonna call it up. So what I usually tend to do is certain months have certain themes, like January, it's always an Inuit book. So we're doing True North Rising by Whit Fraser. I know he's a white guy, but he is married to Mary Simon, so I'm going to give him a chance. February is related to Black History Month, so I've found Rehearsals for Living by Robin Maynard and Leanne Bedosamasaki Simpson, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
March, April, and May, I've decided to focus on Treaty 7 nations and learning more about them. There's not specifically books about them yet for some of them, but March, I'm hoping to do Tsuut'ina. April, I'm hoping to do Irhe Nakoda. And there is perhaps a speaker that Rosemary knows that we might be able to get to come. And May, I was going to do The Great Blackfoot Treaties by Hugh Dempsey, also another white guy. But it was recommended by, actually, Michelle said she has recommended it before, and also Mike Bruised-Head, who was the elder who spoke on September 22nd, Treaty 7 Day at the University of Calgary. So I thought if they both say it's okay, we'll give it a try there. June is Venko by Sherry Dimaline. July, Truth Telling, Michelle Good. August, A Grandmother Begins the Story by Michelle Porter. September, Valley of the Bird Tail and Indian Reserve, A White Town and the Road to Reconciliation by Andrew Stobo Snyderman and Doug Sanderson. And October, White Women, Everything You Need to Know About Your Own Racism and How to Do Better by Sarah Rayo and Regina Jackson, who are the women who hold the
Race for dinner.
Exactly, thank you. And so they've written a book about it. So yes, we should read that. And then November is Disability Visibility by Alice Wong. So that's my year as well. And I'm also hoping, like Michelle, to get more folks in, because basically who belongs to Settler Book Club are people from this book club. So I really appreciate that everyone here comes to my book club too. And hopefully we can get a few new folks in as well.
Yeah, I'll try to promote us both. I'm finding it interesting how many people are interested in having conversations with us now. So maybe I can, always promote both in the hopes. Honestly, I think sometimes it's just timing too. Like, how people have a meeting every second Monday of the month or whatever. Like sometimes it's just that is what makes it work for some people. So I have a deep respect for that. So yeah. All right.
I still want to make a plug for Separate Beds, about how the Indian hospitals, how we were treated by the healthcare system. It's such a good book, and it's only like 270 pages or something like that. So it's an awesome book.
Okay, perfect. I just kind of put it in my chat to try to remember. Thank you, Kathy. Well, go ahead,
Michelle,
Rosemary.
And I know maybe I'm out of line here, but is there any way we could divide that report into 2 sections?
That's a great idea. Yes, absolutely.
Like do part November, part December, and then, yeah,
Sure.
thank you.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. No, I realized oh man, when I first started in 2006, I was like, academic book, academic book, academic book. And then I realized later, like this Tyler Shipley book that I read over the summer, he did basically 9 hours of breaking it down. And it was great. Don't get me wrong. But I'm like, man, I was tough at the start. And ridiculous, right? Like we want to read the book, we want to read the report and kind of dissect it and discuss it as we go. So yeah, I appreciate that. I think what we'll do, let me just have a quick look at my list. Actually, I can share screen. I have it up. So let's do that so that we can all look at it together. Thank you. Here, there we go. All right, let's share. And I'm just getting my episode ready for tomorrow. So November, so the Making Space for Indigenous Feminism, edited by Joyce Green, we'll move that one to just January maybe. And then that way, because I don't have the book yet either. So that works out for me anyway. And I can ask for it for Christmas. So that's how we'll do it. We'll split it up between November and December. And
Thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
And can you send the link to the University of Calgary session with, is it Mike Brewsted on Treaty 7?
I'm sure it's on their YouTube, or yeah, their YouTube. But I'll try to dig up the link here and send it to you, Rosemary.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, in the hopes that people can watch it, because yeah, you're supposed to sign up for it. So I don't know if the video is like a hidden one or if they have it publicly. I find that they usually go pretty public, so that's good. Because I think they just want that information out there, right? More than anything. Treaty 7. Oh man, because everybody has a Treaty 7 like land acknowledgements. You'd be shocked at how hard it is to just dig up. U of C. Maybe that'll be the U of C. Okay, I'll try to send that to you. I don't know where it is right now, but I'll find it. So I found it. Survey recording. And we're going to see if it's open to the public. It's on a Zoom. It's actually on their Zoom. So I am going to copy this and text it to Rosemary. See if this works. Paste.
Can you email it? Because text.
Sure. And I will Okay, if anybody wants that email, just throw your chat or your email in there and I will, actually, I'll just forward this. Forward to Rosemary. Nobody else? Okay, send. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
That's
no
great.
problem. Yeah,
Just
I need to
looking-
watch it too, so.
I was just looking at their website and it looks like they have a page where there might be quite several lectures that they've had. So I just put that link in the chat as well.
Yeah, the email, it says recording, and when you click on it, it actually goes to their Zoom link. So I was kind of surprised because like you're showing that link, their YouTube, like they have a YouTube, right? So, and it's pretty open. So that's good. And they give lots of free information there, which is good. So yeah. All right, folks. Thanks again for everything. Thanks for all the good work you're doing as with Settler Book Club, with Justice for Palestinians, all of the work you're all doing. I hope you know I see you and I appreciate you, and I hope that we support each other as community care because we have to.